I'm Stuart Armour, and this is In PS We Trust. Davey may suck, but Phil and Spencer are worth your time.
Hello and welcome to episode 13 of In PS We Trust. My name's Davey, and joined with me as always is Phil.
Let's go, boys.
And Spencer.
Yes, kings.
So we're a fortnightly PlayStation podcast, and we each bring one topic of discussion to go in depth on. But first, before we get into that, boys, what are you drinking?
Right, well, I usually start, don't I? And usually I drink buds.
Oh.
Let's build the tension for a little bit before you reveal you are actually drinking buds.
Right, yeah, it's buds.
All right.
It's always buds. It's got to be buds.
All right, we'll leave that then. We'll leave that. What about yourself, Phil? What nonsense beer are you on today?
So for me, Davey, this week, I've gone to Japan for my lager.
Okay.
I'm on the Asahi or Asahi. I'm not sure. I've heard it pronounced so many different ways over the times I've been ordering it, and people have been like, no, that's not the right way to pronounce that. So how would you say it? Is it Asahi or Asahi?
I've had Asahi on the podcast. I made a statement on there. And I said that it's supposed to be Asahi, but the way I say it is the way it should be in English, which is Asahi. And so that's the way I'm going to say it. Because it's written in English, so I'm saying it in English.
If you went to a bar, how would you order it?
Oh, I'll have an Asahi, please.
Let's do a bit of role play. All right, sir. How you doing? What are you drinking today?
Oh, it's really nice to be called sir in a dive like this. I'll have an Asahi, please.
A what?
One of those Japanese beers you got over there.
Sumimasen?
Oh, I'm in Japan, am I? I'll have an Asahi, please.
Hi. That's all my Japanese. There we go.
Those lessons paying off well. So that's it tonight. You're solely on the Japanese.
Well, I'm gonna start off with the Japanese, but I think as the podcast goes on, I might switch it up. I've got a couple of other lagers downstairs, which might surprise you and update you on later on in the podcast. Keep you guys on your toes. I don't like to be the predictable one on the podcast, so let's see what I drink later on.
Well, for myself, I was in the supermarket, as always, doing the standard protocol, check how much the Spanish is and then move on from there. Had a little stroke on a Camden Hells bottle while I was passing, felt lovely. And then I decided, do you know what? I'm going to go for something I haven't had for a while. So I've gone for a Tsingtao. It's a Chinese beer. I've had quite a few times, really enjoy it. And I'm pairing that today with the last of those Lost Lager cans. And I tell you, after 12 cans of it, I'm really starting to enjoy it now. It is quite nice.
I'm not surprised. Is that 12 cans tonight before we started?
No. Definitely not. Just overall, that's my lifetime amount of Lost Lager that I've consumed. So I'm going to end it on 14, which when I run out, and then hopefully never buy it again. It's still a second-rate lager.
I was going to say, most things, taste good after 12 cans of anything.
That's true. Jaeger gets better the more you have, as we learnt.
Kind of, yeah. Opinion.
So have you been practicing the accent for your first drink, Davey?
It wasn't until I walked out of Tesco where I bought the Tsingtao and I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this without it coming off as racist.
Just give it a go. We're all friends.
Embrace it, mate. Embrace it.
Now, fortunately, we got no Chinese listeners. So I got no worries here, okay?
Drink Qingdao. No China. Qingdao beer used to be the first impression and the taste of China presented to people all over the world.
Textbook. So, it's been a number of weeks since the last episode. What have you been playing?
So, boys, the first game I want to mention is actually a game that Phil brought up last week, and it's a game called Maquette.
What, after my glowing review, I think I rated it a 2 out of 10 on the Phil scale of great games.
You did. And my opinion is quite different. I'm going to say, granted, it's not very long, but it's a good game. It's basically a story of a boy and a girl meeting each other, falling in love, and breaking up. And that's the whole story of the game. And I believe you play as the girl. It's a bit confusing. but you just solve puzzles, and each time you solve enough puzzles, you unlock another chapter into their life. You learn more about their story. It's actually a really sad game. I actually got a bit emotional.
It's probably a better explanation than the way I tried to. That's probably a better explanation than what I gave on the previous podcast. But I didn't get on with the game. But of course, you got a lot more time on your hands than me, Spence, being still in college.
It's true, mate. Also, I am quite a fan of puzzle games in general. Like,
Sure.
I like Superliminal and such. So I put in the time to play it, solve the puzzles. The puzzles are actually really fun. There's one part of the game that is terrible. It's literally a short 2-minute section, but it is the buggiest mess in a game I've ever played in my life. And it's basically, you need these puzzle pieces, you need to put them in place to create the path for you ahead of time. And there's a chance, for one, your frame rate drops to like 2. Your frame rate drops to nothing. And there's a chance, when you try to place this piece, it can teleport behind the wall. So you can no longer use it. You have to quit out and restart the chapter.
And just a bit of background for our listeners. This is the PlayStation 5 offering of PlayStation Plus. And yeah, I didn't get on with it if you didn't listen to the last episode of the podcast, which I'm not sure why you wouldn't have, because it was a banger. But yeah, no, I definitely experienced some bugs like that you're going through, Spence.
Yeah, that was mostly like the only bug. Other than that, that's literally a game-breaking bug, but that's the only thing, and it's a 2-minute segment, so if you can get past it, the game's fine. But the game itself, other than that little section, I thought was brilliant. Because you beat the game, you do all these puzzles, and then obviously I went for the platinum. And you have to basically do time trials of all the chapters you've been through. And learning those puzzles and learning how to do it so fast and execute it perfectly feels amazing. Because the first time you do the game, it's solid. You don't understand what's going on. Game makes no sense. Then once you've beat it, everything clicks. And trying to do it as fast as you can is just so fun.
I think we got to the root of the reason why you enjoyed the game. You said you got the platinum for it?
I did. I mean, I enjoyed it before I got the platinum. But yeah.
Just an added bonus, isn't it?
It is
Just
an
a nice
added
little
bonus.
bonus getting the platinum. So what would you rate it then in contrast to Phil's 2 out of 10?
In terms of gameplay, a 4. In terms of story, a 6 or a 7. So together, maybe a 5 or a low 6.
But would you pay
Okay.
would you pay the fee for it if it wasn't on PS Plus? I think it was around $15.99, $14.99. I think it was that price mark if you went to the store outside of PS Plus. Would you pay that?
I think I would, yeah. Just for the story alone. The story is brilliant. I'm glad I didn't, but I would, yeah.
Fair dues. I'm still kind of on the fence. I've got it downloaded, and it's just finding the time to actually sit in there and do it rather than play something else, you know? I've been spending my time playing Resident Evil 3 for the PlayStation 1, and I've been playing that on my PlayStation Classic. Like I mentioned quite a few episodes ago, I bought it just to be able to play this game for review. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was my favourite one when I played the original trilogy back in the day. Resident Evil 3 was my favourite for a long time. Until kind of in later years when I look back at Resident Evil 1 Remake, and that just overtook it. In pretty much every way, to be fair. But playing it again, it's such a throwback. It's just a proper nostalgia trip. Just hearing the menu noises, just the way the doors open, going up the stairs and the stair animations kicking in. All that stuff is just such a throwback. It's, oh.
And I know you're an expert when it comes to sort of impressions, but can we get a Nemesis-style stars from you, Davey?
Stars.
Slightly better than your Chinese
My
accent.
Chinese.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing going back to playing Resident Evil 3 because it's kind of the black sheep of the series. So with Resident Evil 3, it was the first one to incorporate loads of gameplay elements that became standard for Resident Evil going forward. So it was the first one to have quick turns. It was the first one to create proper ammunition creation. So you could have different gunpowders and mix them to be able to create magnum ammo, to be able to create grenade freeze rounds. It incorporated all that quite deep into it. It kind of built on what Mr. X was in Claire's campaign of Resident Evil 2, but to a much greater extent of having one enemy kind of continually spawn and kind of chase you. And I remember at the time I was terrified of that game. Playing it now, Nemesis is just not a challenge whatsoever. He's like the easiest thing to get around ever. And the kind of bigger crazy thing is, I was playing it on hard, and the amount of enemies in that game is insane. You literally go out of one corridor and you'll have about 15 zombies. Walk out into the next area, there's 5 dogs. Then you walk past a bus and 4 crows explode out of it. Then 2 more zombies. And I was just like, Jesus Christ. And I did the typical thing where you get to the end of Resident Evil, and I had 36 rounds of Magnum ammo and 41 rounds of grenade launcher. And I just did it all with a pistol and shotgun. And I got to the end and thought, fuck me. Why do I do this every single time? Like, surely by now I should have the right ratio down. Spence, you watched a little bit of my stream.
Yeah.
What were your kind of thoughts about it?
I thought it looked really good. Again, like similar to what you said, I saw you enter a hallway and there was just a massive horde. And they literally, usually they kind of steer you in Resident Evil, so you have to circumvent them. But when I watched you play RE3, there was no circumventing those zombies. There was just a wall of like 10 zombies, and I thought, oh, what's your options? You have one option. Either that or go back through the door. Like, what are you supposed to do? So obviously I saw you do that, and I just thought, this is a different type of game. This is clearly more shooter heavy. But the big thing I saw that interested me was that you started to fall into a hole. And an option came up saying either climb up or fall down, and it gave you a choice on how to progress the story. That was really cool, because that doesn't happen in any of the other... In RE1 or 2, it doesn't happen at all. And I'm hoping I see the same thing in the RE3 remake.
Oh, I'm sorry to disappoint you. It doesn't.
Oh.
It doesn't ever reappear in any of the other games, which is a real shame, actually, because, yeah, it's called a live selection when that happens, and the whole purpose of it was supposed to add replay value. Because there wasn't 2 campaigns like there was for Resident Evil 1 and 2, it was a way for you to be able to take the same story but take different paths.
Yeah.
And you get like different bosses, you get different enemies, and yeah, it does kind of spice it up quite a bit.
You say it never happened again, but you did have a choice when it came to Resident Evil 7, wasn't it? When you had the choice between the 2 girls, which one you saved.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not
true.
to pull
That's
you
true.
up on the whole Resident Evil, because I know you've been sweating it quite recently, but I think that's the same sort of thing you're talking about, correct?
Kinda, yeah, but this is on more of like a moment by moment basis. I think there's like 9 or 10 of them across the game, so it could be as simple as the first time Nemesis pulls up and you see him, you can choose to fight him or run, and that comes up on live selection. Or when you go into one of the areas, like you go into the newspaper place, for example, and in there you got a choice of either staying in there while it's on fire or jumping out the window, and depending on which option you take, Nemesis will either follow you or he'll get blown up in there. It's things like that.
They're kind of the precursors to QuickTime events, aren't they? They put you under pressure to make that choice quite quickly.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And you can see where they kind of built on that for Resident Evil 4. But yeah, that's been the main thing I've been playing. Apart from that, after last episode, you guys kind of pulled me up on the fact that I'd never played Altered Beast. And so I thought, right, okay, I was waiting for a game to download that we'll cover in a moment. And I saw on PlayStation Now they got Altered Beast on there, which was re-released on the PS3 with the Sega Vintage Collection or something. And I thought, fuck it, I'll give it a go. Played it, done the first 2 levels. When you're the Beast, that game feels amazing. Feels so fun, like kind of zipping around the screen, shooting fireballs, like tanking enemies. Feels immense. When you're just a normal bloke and you become like big man with like still a tiny head and all that, it feels absolutely shit. That entire game, you're like walking side to side, and he's got like a little stanky leg kick that he's got, and I was just spamming that on enemies. I was just like, this is so boring. And then as soon as you get that wolf power up or the flying dragon power up, I'm like, oh boy, this game's come alive. Based on what you guys said last week, you guys were saying how good this game is and how amazing it is and all this. It's average. It's just an average game where half of it's shit when you're just a bloke, and the other half's great when you're a beast. Why can't you just be a beast forever? Unleash the beast.
Did you not think that maybe they made the bloke unsatisfying to play just to make the beast feel better?
But what? That's the worst game design ever. Let's make half of it shit, so the other half's good.
But old games were hard, mate, and that was the appeal, wasn't it? So you'd progress, you'd fight your way through to become the beast, to get like an easy run for a couple of minutes before you reverted back, or you took a bit of damage and got knocked back to being the human form, and you've got to fight your way through again. Games were like that. They were unforgiving back in the day. You probably don't know this because you were born, what, you're 21 now, just coming up.
I wish I was 21. Oh my god, I wish I was 21. I'm 32.
That's what it says on your Tinder profile, doesn't it?
I was born in '89, so I was born a year after this game came out. I'm quite glad I never played it on the Genesis. I am, because now I can look at it with a grown-up, mature brain and give it a proper assessment instead of being blinded by nostalgia. And whereas a lot of other beat-em-ups still stand up today and they're fantastic, just like we spoke about last episode, Alter Beast is not one of them. Average.
Side-scrolling beat-em-ups, they're all average, mate. None of them are good.
What?
Are they? Streets of Rage?
Streets of Rage 2 is still great now, mate.
I don't think so.
It is, honest.
It's all just like, I love them. It's my favourite genre of games, but they're all terrible.
Yeah, they're mostly nostalgia-driven, and that is true. You play Streets of Rage and you play Altered Beast, you can do more in Altered Beast, to be fair.
Or play Battletoads, or play any of these games.
Can't
play
move up and
Maximum
down.
Carnage. We gave a massive list of games of this genre, and they're all trash if you played them now. But when you were a kid, they were awesome.
It's true.
I disagree with you.
When
on
I
this.
was a kid, they were awesome.
I think a lot of them still stand up really, really well, just for being like arcadey, fun games to play. But Altered Beast, just walking in a straight line, using a little stanky leg to kick a wolf, it just ain't it.
Right, but are all the ones that you think hold up now the ones you played as a kid?
He's fucking got me, didn't he? Yes. Yes.
Yes, they are.
Checkmate. Yeah, all right. Okay. Well, what have you been playing, Phil?
What have I been playing? Well, I've just looked down the list. A lot of the games I think you've moved around, probably because we've all been playing them together. But I think the only unique game I've been playing the last 2 weeks is a game you guys ripped apart on the previous podcast, which was PlayStation Plus's Destruction All-Stars.
I can't wait to hear your thoughts. I cannot wait.
So, just for context, I think it's about 3 episodes ago. I think maybe in episode 9, me and Spence both came off playing it, and we were not kind to that game at all. In fact, I think it's the most savage we've been about a game so far, pointing out all its flaws. I was saying I was a lot more critical on it than you were, Spence.
I tried giving it a chance.
You did. You spent more time on it than I did, and I was just not a fan of that. Get in the bin game.
I was quite shocked by your review of it, Davey, because you generally are like a PlayStation apologist. You love everything that comes out of PlayStation, right? And this is an official PlayStation game, right? And you trashed it.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm always going to shoot from the hip. I'm going to tell it straight. And it just turns out that most of the games that Sony put out are actually stellar. But there's always a couple that just ain't it. And that's one of them. But I am really intrigued to hear what you think, Phil.
So I installed the game because I was looking through the list, and I only had like 1 hour maybe just to spare, and I thought we'll spend a bit of time on PlayStation Plus, seeing as you guys forked out that money for me, which is very nice.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't want to start Final Fantasy. I think that's going to come up in a future episode. So my only choice really was Destruction All-Stars, which I don't own a PSVR for Farpoint. So I installed PS Plus's Destruction All-Stars, and it crashed in the tutorial. So I didn't
Excellent.
I didn't start off very well with the game. Then I tried to load into multiplayer. I was playing in the day on my lunch break, and it was completely dead. I couldn't find a multiplayer game.
Really? Not
That's soon.
one?
100%. And how long has this game been out?
A month? 2 months?
2 months, I'd say. 2 or 3 months.
February it came out, I think. Wasn't it February's PS Plus game?
Yeah, it was February, yeah. February 21st, I think.
Could not find a multiplayer game. So I thought, do you know what? F that game. We'll go back upstairs. We've got some emails to send. I had another hour where I thought, do you know what? I might give it another chance. And I finally got into a game. This was in the evening, so you'd expect a couple more people to be playing this game. And it's not as bad as you guys made out. It's actually just a bunch of dumb fun. there's nothing to the game, right? You just roll round, you choose your character, you pick up your car, and you just bump into people, right? And it's loads of flashy graphics and sound effects. But it was okay. I kind of enjoyed it. But it's not a game I'm going to really spend any more time in, and I couldn't see myself playing it for any sort of length of time or trying to be competitive in it. But it was okay for the time I spent in it. I could imagine if I was a bit younger and I had more time on my hands, I would jump in and sort of learn a bit more about the characters and their power-ups and their special moves, their breakers and their hero vehicles. But for the time I spent with it, I picked up a character called Fugo, which is the big rocker guy, covered in tattoos, horns, and breathes fire. His breaker, which is when you're sort of running around the map, is he runs and he leaves fire behind him. And his hero vehicle sets itself on fire, which is pretty cool, right? It's a car on fire, ramming into people. And it was okay. As I said, it's just dumb fun.
Would you... I don't even want to ask. What would you rate Destruction All-Stars out of 10?
I would rate it higher than Marquette.
I know. That's what
Because I had a
hear.
smile on my face when I was playing it. I wasn't just constantly just bored in it. It's the same kind of feeling that I have when I play Fortnite or any of those kind of like games that you can just jump in. It doesn't really matter. It's just a bit of fun.
Did you find my main critique I had with it, if you remember, was about the fact that there's no real impact in that game. Like, you'll go 70 miles an hour, smash into somebody, and it doesn't even feel like you just love tapped them. It doesn't feel like as if you just wrote their car off, you know? It's not like Burnout when you smash into someone, or even old school like Destruction Derby for PS1, right? You'd crash into somebody and you're like, oh, I fucked them up. On that game, you're just like, oh, I've taken a chip of paint off. And I'm just like, oh.
That doesn't really sync up with my experience, but maybe I don't know. I got to drive the hero vehicles quite quickly in the game, and I think as soon as you got those, the destructions were a lot larger. But it might have been my character because, of course, everything was setting on fire with Fugo. So I don't know who you were playing and sort of what points you were scoring, but I generally sort of finished maybe top 3 within the map. So one thing I will say about Destruction All-Stars is that as much as I enjoyed that hour that I spent with it, it's probably something I'm not going to return to. And if it wasn't offered as part of PS Plus, it definitely wouldn't be a game I would have bought. And I think originally it was going to come out on PlayStation 5 at the £70 mark, and it definitely wouldn't have achieved that, in my opinion. Even if it was, at the $15.99 mark, which Maquette was, which we were speaking about earlier, it's not a game I would have bought. But for the hour I spent in it, it was okay, guys. It was a bit of fun.
I have one question.
Hit me.
Is it still installed on your PS5?
It is, because I haven't got any new games just yet. None of the pre-orders have come in just yet, obviously. So there's no reason to uninstall things. I tend to just leave things on the PlayStation. I don't just uninstall things because I've finished playing them.
So, boys, I have one other game that I've been playing.
Okay.
And it's basically... I played it last week, and it made my top 10. Made my top 5 even.
Well, top 2, wasn't it?
It made my top 2.
Big.
But now they definitely know what it is. Jeez. Basically, I played RE2 again and tried the Claire B story, as it would be called. And let me say, the Claire story, second run Claire, at first just freaked me out. Because it feels like you skip the entire first half of the game. You start in the garden, it gives you the bloody cutters right away. You get another pistol right away. You get a grenade launcher in 5 minutes. And I just thought, how long is this? And it turned out to be the exact same fucking length, didn't it? I was a bit fuming, not going to lie.
It does jump into it a lot faster, doesn't it? And I'm really glad you played her sort of campaign second,
Yeah, of course. Like, she's intended to be second, I feel. But I did have a lot of fun with it. I still prefer Leon's story, but I did like her segments, especially with Sherry and stuff. The whole hide and seek little gimmick where I played Ring Around the Rosie with the Chief Irons. But it was really fun. We don't need to cover it as much as we did last week because we covered it a lot, so we're going to keep it short. But RE2 is a phenomenal game for both Leon and Claire.
just to nip in at the end of this segment, are we still keeping the rule that if we do mention Resident Evil, there's a shot of Jägermeister? Because I think you've both brought it up now.
It's any time outside of what we've been playing. That
If
we
you reference, mate. It's
if
not
we-
a reference.
if we reference it any point from when we leave this segment of what we've been playing, the Resident Evil button's been pressed and somebody's getting punished.
I don't want to do a shot of Jaeger. I really don't want to do a shot of Jaeger.
Well, don't mention Resident Evil. It's going to be very hard.
It is going to be hard. It's going to be especially hard.
If someone else brings it up, can I respond?
Yes. Yeah, if the Resident Evil button's pushed, it's whoever pushes the Resident Evil button needs to get punished.
All right, that's blessed. That's fine. That's fine. Because one of you boys will do it. One of you will do it, and I'll just respond.
Mate, I've already told you I like 2 games. I can talk about Death Stranding. That's fine. There isn't a forfeit for that just yet.
For the moment. Depends how out of hand it gets. So, the beauty of Phil having PlayStation Plus now is that we've been able to play games together. And last time we spoke about Mortal Kombat, and of course we've all been playing Mortal Kombat as well this week, but there's nothing really new to report on that. However, we all decided to check out Remnant from the Ashes, which is a 3-player co-op game, PvE. Kind of Dark Souls influenced, but with guns. Well, that's how it feels to me. We sunk probably now about 7-8 hours into that, I would have thought. Give me your opinions, guys. What are you thinking about the game so far?
I did a bit of background research on this game, read up on the Wikipedia, what people felt about this game when it first came out. So the wiki describes it as an action role-playing third-person shooter. So kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Developed by Gunfire Games and originally released in 2019 on the PS4. IGN gave it an 8 out of 10, with the Metacritic sitting around 77 out of 100. So as you said, we've all been playing, and it's a 3-player co-op game. And it definitely fulfills the holy trinity of archetypes when it comes to character selection. I've picked the DPS character, the Hunter. Spencer, you've gone for the ex-cultist, which is the healer character. And of course, Davey, you're the scrapper, being the tank.
Straight in with the scrap. Love a bit of scrap, me. Just got to run in there, smack them up with that massive donging staff.
I just want to help my team.
And I just want to put out the deeps.
I'll say, I'm very, very surprised. As brilliant as this game is, and we've been having a brilliant time with it, I did not expect the Metacritic and IGN review to be that high.
Yeah, reading on the wiki, it was generally well received, basically, by critics anyway. And of course, with the Metacritic score players as well. Like high 77, that's a good score for a game.
That's not bad at all. I thought it'd be lower than that. When did it release?
I said 2019 on the PS4.
Quite recent then.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which, to be fair, it doesn't feel like it was 2019, does it? It feels like
No,
it feels to
it
me
doesn't,
like
no.
it's a really early PlayStation 4 game, based on kind of like the textures and the gameplay itself isn't very deep.
It's quite shallow.
Am I okay to say that? It's not a deep game. You run around, you press fire, we heal a lot, and there's a couple of not intricate bosses, but there's a couple of unique boss fights.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. I gotta say, I do have some problems with the game. The actual map system is just shockingly bad, and be able to find your way, like where you need to go next and stuff like that, it's just more complicated than it needs to be. I don't know if it's kind of leaning into that Dark Souls influence or if it's just badly designed in that way. But I find that really, really annoying. And the only other problem I have with the game that's kind of deep-rooted into it is everything looks the fucking same. You go into one environment and it just looks identical throughout the entire host of dungeons that you do in that environment. And so combining that with the map system being as bad as it is, you get into a situation where you're like, I think we've been here, boys. No, we haven't. And then you run the entire dungeon through and you're like, yeah, we've definitely done this. Yeah, we've been here. And that's like half hour gone.
You can't tell until you're sort of halfway through the dungeon, can you? Because they are so similar. The start of each dungeon could be exactly the same, but then it could differ slightly where the boss is or where the secret room is, or, when we picked up those items for some of the costumes that we got in the game.
Yeah, I was literally about to mention those. It doesn't help that now we're all wearing the exact same armor as well, so we can't even tell each other apart.
Yeah, so
is
complicated. I don't know who I want to shoot. That's the
Exactly.
problem. That's the problem.
So that is one of the high points I found with the game. Team damage is on. So it is quite fun pointing out, the doorway, watching you sprint off into the future and me just nailing you in the back of the head with my rifle.
It's quite a good stress reliever, I find. You know, I can save all this up from the podcast and then just start laying into you on that game. It's just quite fun.
There's definitely a +1 there for PS Plus. So winning with the Remnant from the Ashes game.
Solidly at the moment, I'd give it a good 6.5, 7 out of 10. I'm enjoying my time with it. I'm thinking the bosses are great. All the bosses so far, bar one, have been really, really good, really enjoyable, and especially there's been a couple that really kicked our ass. And then we have to kind of sit back and then formulate a plan. And I really like that.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that the actual kind of dungeon part of it is pretty lame, really.
I think it's a solid 6 out of 10 for me, and it wouldn't reach 6 out of 10 if I was playing it solo. You know, I've wandered around the maps a little bit on my own and got a bit far into it, and of course I did the tutorial on my own, and it isn't fun. It's only fun because we're all playing it together and it's 3-player, and for some strange reason we got 3 of us on the podcast, so it's worked out really well for my first month of PS Plus.
I feel very much the same, that it's mostly only fun because it's all 3 of us playing together. But then when you brought up how well the reviews did, it made me think, surely they're playing single player. Like, maybe they aren't, but I'd imagine if you're reviewing a game, you wouldn't play with your mates.
The game's got loads of add-ons as well. There's loads of DLC for it. So it must have been quite popular.
Yeah, I just feel like it's weird. Like, I wouldn't expect it to be a very good solo experience at all, yet they're still rating it so high, and I'd imagine they had the solo experience. So maybe it is good single player if you play the whole game through on your own.
Or maybe everyone else that rated it are on the other podcasts that we're looking at now in the list on Spotify. So we're like, hey guys, they're the people that have been playing Remnant from the Ashes and giving it the high score. Those 3 on that other podcast.
Scumheads.
Which we won't mention, of course.
No accounting for taste, is there sometimes? There's just no accounting for taste. But no, it's been fun playing with you guys. I've been really, really enjoying it. And speaking of playing other games, Spence, you and me, just last night and today, started diving into a brand new release, actually released on the day of recording, which is the 26th of March. It Takes Two. Wow. What a game.
I have a little bit I want to say about this. Firstly, when someone asks you, what game feels the best to move in on like PlayStation, you think, oh, Spider-Man Miles Morales, swinging through the sea, feels amazing. No. Spider-Man feels like arseholes compared to It Takes Two. It Takes Two, for some reason, has the nicest feeling movement of any game I've ever played in my life.
I wouldn't know, Spence, because it takes 2. It doesn't take 3.
Yeah, sorry, mate. You went to bed.
You buy me PS Plus, and then you give me this.
It's crazy, though, isn't it? It's like when we were in there, we were in just one moment where there wasn't anything really going on. We were just in kind of a room waiting to progress the story. And we were just messing around with the movement, just trying to figure out different like kind of techniques and trying to finesse it for style. It feels like, you know, when you watch Melee being played and you're like, Jesus, that movement's so slick, right? And then you actually play Melee yourself and you realize that game is trash, right? But playing that game feels like butter. It feels so smooth. It's so nice.
It feels absolutely amazing. The game literally came out today. It came out midnight last night. And so far, we're only a few chapters into it. Basically, you play as Cody and May, and they're married with a daughter. And basically, they're having a divorce. And they tell the daughter, and the daughter runs to the shed with her little handmade dolls. And she cries. She's upset. She's like, oh, my parents hate each other. Yeah. And she cries on the dolls and wishes they were friends. She says, I wish they were friends again, and then starts making them kiss each other. It's a bit weird. And then she cries on them because she's upset. And it casts a spell, as Cody would say. It casts a spell on them. And they leave their human bodies. And Cody becomes a little clay doll. May becomes a little wooden doll. And they have to go on an adventure to learn to work together and find the love that they've lost.
One question before yours, Davey. Who was the bitch?
Oh, it was me. I wanted to be her. She got a wagon, mate.
I only just know what a wagon is after playing Remnant with you.
The problem is that in this game, the man's the bitch. The total
It's
bitch.
true.
I hate Cody. I think he's an absolute cuck. I hate him. And so far, throughout this game, they're trying to paint both characters that have flaws, right? So far, May's perfect. all right? She is perfect woman. She's out, she's earning the bread. He's staying at home, Cody is, just looking after the kids and just watching nature documentaries. She's out on a high-profile engineering job. And then he's like, well, you haven't fixed a vacuum cleaner. It's like, fuck off, mate. I'm earning like 70k a year. You're sitting at home doing fuck all while your daughter's in school. Fix the fucking vacuum cleaner. He's doing my nutting. I'm ready to bin him off. I'm so glad they're getting a divorce. But I will tell you, the amount of times that they mention we're having a divorce every 5 minutes is starting to piss me off, actually. Because it's like they just survived like some life-ending thing. And they're like, they come out of it and they're like, I wish you'd fix that vacuum earlier. She's like, we're getting a divorce. It's like, come on. You've said it like 50 times in the last 10 minutes. Like, we know you're getting a divorce. We know. And there's going to be one point that you know in the story they're going to get to and they'll be like, I love you. And they'll be like, we're not getting a divorce. Like, you just know it's obviously going to go that way. And it's just, there's certain parts of it that are a bit weird, right? The voice acting's a little bit dodgy, I'm not going to lie. There's basically what there is, there's a love book, right? And he's kind of your guide throughout the game.
So for our vacuum enthusiasts, do we have a handheld or is it an upright? Just a bit of background.
It's an upright, and it's kind of a rip on a Henry Hoover.
Oh,
kind of a similar
that makes
kind
a difference,
of thing.
mate. That makes a difference. That is divorce material. Don't mess up the Henry Hoover.
Nah, he was a shit Henry Hoover, mate. He was an arsehole. I'm glad they replaced him with the TX2000.
You remember the name of that vacuum? It's weird, right? The whole game's kind of weird, to be fair, because the voice acting, the daughter is British, the mum's British voice actor, the dad's American, right? And it's, I guess, in America, unless they're obscenely rich and they got shed loads of land, because it is a massive place, right? So I imagine they're in America, so I don't know why the daughter's not got an American accent. I don't get that. Also don't get why the daughter's voiced by an old woman instead of being an actual kid, pretending to be an old woman, which is really weird. That kind of throws me off. And the love book's also kind of pissing me off a little.
Accents don't matter, mate. Michael Fassbender, Magneto, he's Irish in the first class, and it makes no sense because he comes from Germany and he's got a big Irish accent. So don't worry about accents in games or movies because none of that matters.
True. I will say, I think the book, obviously the book's pissing me off as well, but the book's supposed to piss you off because it also is pissing off the characters in the game. And what better way to find love with each other than by hating someone else together? It's the easiest way to be a mate, is to be like, oh, I fucking hate him. They're like, oh, same. And you're like, yeah, let's go.
I felt that way when Davey was hating on the bugs that we were killing in Remnant from the Ashes.
I realised I'm proper racist against bugs. I don't know if that's a thing, like being so pro-mammalian, being a mammal, that I just hate anything else, any other kind of species that isn't a mammal. But turns out it's transferred over to this. We just fought wasps. And I was cussing those wasps left, right, and centre. So, I don't know, maybe it's just something that I've developed. You know, like people, they say, like, the older you get, you turn, like, more conservative and stuff like that. Hopefully this isn't the beginning of that. Because I'm at the point now where I'm just hating a different species. Yeah.
So now you become conservative is the next step. Yeah. Amazing to make that connection.
Hopefully it doesn't go that way.
I was just thinking, on the next series of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of There, once this podcast starts, making some big moves, we're going to nominate you to go on the show, obviously, if you hate bugs.
Well, and they just take all these different cutouts. The only thing I'd say, the only bug that started to change my mind was when we were in Remnant and there's a moth lady, and she was starting to change my mind. I was starting to get some feelings for that butterfly, but overall, I hate bugs. Bugs just suck. They just suck. I'm sorry if there's any bug people somehow listening to this. I apologize, but you don't deserve to exist. So we'll just leave it there.
Before we do move on. Out of 10, from our experience so far, what do you rate It Takes Two?
Doing a lot of ratings today, but I do quite like it.
We are.
So far from what I played, with how varied the gameplay's been. So we're probably, 3 hours into the game now, I'd say? 3 or 4?
Yeah, 3 or 4 at most.
And every single section is completely different from the last one. And I kind of wonder, it reminds me a lot, actually, Spence, you'll probably agree with me on this. It reminds me a lot of Astros.
Yeah, I do agree. It's the same kind of perception. You're just a small little character exploring Each world has its own little gimmick, and you have to just overcome little challenges. Yeah, I kind of get it.
I'm wondering how they're going to keep this up, because you said this game's like 15 odd hours.
Yeah, it's 15 to 16 hours, and the creator said it deserves a world record for most mechanics in a video game.
If that keeps up until the end, which by the time we get to the next episode, we'll be able to give you a full opinion on it, I'll be amazed, because it's been outstanding so far. Easy 8 out of 10. Gameplay alone is a 10 out of 10. I love the gameplay. It's perfect.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It's just the only thing that's letting it down for me is the characters. I'm really not too invested in them, and I think part of it's because I hate my guy. I hate Cody. He's just an absolute cuck.
I mean, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. I have issues with the characters as well, but whereas you're saying he's the cuck, obviously the reason he's a bit of stay-at-home family and she's at work is they make up for what each other lack. So she's too committed to work. She doesn't know anything about her daughter. She didn't even know she made the dolls. Whereas he stay at home with the daughter, he's earning no money. So they just make up for each other's thing. And when they do divorce, she's fine. He's going to keep the kid, isn't he? She's going to run off with her peas, all the money in the world. No kid freaking on her ass. She's sound. Cody's fucked, man. He ain't got no job. He's got a little kid following him.
Davey, do you think if you had got to play the female character, you would have enjoyed it more? Because Spencer has a much more... Well, he's given it a higher score for being the female character. Do you think he's getting a better experience because he has the more favourable character, I suppose?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just a case that I'm just...
You're taking it too personally, I feel. Too much of it is just relating to you, and you're just thinking, ooh.
I'm just thinking, Cody, mate, you got a good thing here. Like, sure, she needs to work on a few things, but, maybe put some effort in yourself, all right? And it doesn't help that in these first 3 chapters, everything that's gone wrong has been Cody's fault. So,
it's true. Listener,
you got to play this game. It is superb. If you've got another friend that you regularly play PlayStation with, or a partner, or anything like that,
or me. I let's put that out there now. I'm looking for someone to play games with, because these two, they like to have their little friendship on their own on the side. They don't include Phil over here.
So, listener, if you want to play with Phil or somebody else, then check out this game. You are missing out not playing it.
How would they get in touch with us, Davey?
So the best way to get in contact with us is, of course, via the email. That is pswetrust@gmail.com. You can also message any of us on Twitter, and we will respond. And we also have our own Reddit page, which the link to that is going to be in the description of the podcast below.
So as it's the quick news section, I'm going to talk really fast. Turtle Rock Studios Back for Blood. It's moved from the 22nd of June now to the 12th of October. Unfortunately, they need some more time to perfect the game, but on some good news, there is an open beta this summer.
So last month, Play at Home with Sony, we had 1 game, Ratchet & Clank. This month, they've stepped it up. We now have 6 games and 4 VR games. The 6 games are as follows: Res Infinite, Abzu, The Witness, Enter the Gungeon, Subnautica, and Horizon Zero Dawn Ultimate Edition. The 4 VR games are Moss, Astrobot, Paper Beast, and Thumper. And all of these games, aside from Horizon, are available today, or 3 days ago by the time this goes live. But Horizon will be available on the 19th of April to download for a very limited time, so get it whilst you can.
And the best thing about this, guys, you don't need a PlayStation Plus subscription or a PlayStation Now subscription. These games are completely free if you have a PS4 or a PS5 console. And
finally, on this podcast, we've spoke a few times about different PlayStation movies that have been announced, with the Uncharted movie and the Last of Us movie. There's been 3 more added to the dock. We got a Resident Evil movie announcement, Welcome to Raccoon City. Dark Souls is rumored to be made into a movie, and Ghost of Tsushima is apparently in the works. Now, we're just going to keep an eye on these. As soon as we get trailers or any real news, we'll actually start covering them. But at the moment, there isn't too much to say about them other than just raw speculation.
And of course, recently we've had that Mortal Kombat trailer as well, and that's tasty. But I'm sure we'll cover that in a future episode.
Okay, so for the first topic, my topic is all around the news that Sony apparently is shutting down the PS3, PSP, and Vita stores in the summer. Now, this is an article from TheGamer.com, and I'll link that into the description of the podcast. So, this is straight from the source here, and I quote, "The PS3, PS Vita, and PlayStation Portable stores aren't long for this world, According to a source familiar with the situation, verified by TheGamer, the stores are due to be closed down from July. The announcement is planned for the end of this month. PSP's and PS3 stores are to be closed on July 2nd, while the PS Vita store will stay open until August 27th. After those dates, you will no longer be able to purchase digital copies of games or DLC from any of the Sony consoles mentioned above. Now, just for context on this, the PSP store has been up and running for 16 years, PS3, 15 years, and PlayStation Vita for 10 years. Now, Phil, as a person who buys their games physically, just like myself, and with Spencer too, what do you feel about this?
I think the impact, to be fair, isn't going to bother me. But when I read this on the doc, it arced back to what Nintendo did with their DSware store, where they closed it in 2017, and of course where they closed the Wii Shop store in 2019. But it's all down to sort of backwards compatibility, isn't it, across consoles? Because by contrast, you can access the last 4 generations of Xbox games on Xbox because their ecosystem is much more backwards compatible. For me, if I was digital, I'd be so annoyed, but I'm physical, so ultimately it doesn't really matter too much, and I don't have a PS Vita.
That's fair. For me, for one, I'm amazed the PSP store's been active for this long. Can't believe that didn't get shut down earlier. And also, how are people going to play Crisis Core now without buying that physical? I bet that's going to raise the prices quite a bit. But I don't own any of these, so that's fine for me. I buy physical as well. It's fine for me. But I did see something that people were talking about before, which was people were able to find a section for PS3 games on their PlayStation 5s when they went onto the store. So maybe they're shutting down that individual store to integrate it with the PS store now to add that backwards compatibility type aspect.
There's kind of 2 things that I want to kind of cover on this topic after getting your initial thoughts. So the first is that, to me, it opens the door, just like you said, Phil, to comparisons directly to the Xbox, because on the Xbox you can play all the previous systems and you could just download those games, buy them, 4 generations like you said. PlayStation 3, we know we've got a way to be able to play those games with PlayStation Now. However, it's not the best solution. Being able to stream games is nowhere near as good as being able to download them locally. And on top of that, you've got a limited selection, let alone the games that you've bought yourself. Like for me, who's had PlayStation Plus since the day it launched, I'm losing out on loads of games that I potentially have got access to from my years of PlayStation 3, PlayStation Plus, and I can't play any of them at the moment, which is really annoying. Let alone when that store closes, I've just lost them all. And that is so frustrating. Let alone the games that I bought, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, that I got my PlayStation 3, bought that digitally, can't play that. It's so annoying.
Do you know a monetary figure on how much that possibly could be if you totaled up all the games? I'm not expecting you to come off the top of your head, but how many years would that be subscription to PS3? And then if you think how many games you had per month as well, that probably adds up to quite a hell of a lot of dollar.
Well, an average year, I think last year on PlayStation 4, it worked out £236 worth of value for PlayStation Plus, right?
Oh, well, there we go, yeah.
So, if we go since it launched. So, PlayStation Plus launched on the 11th of November 2006.
Jesus.
Okay? So, you're talking, 15 years? 15 years worth of games down the shitter that I can't access anymore if I wanted to. Now, granted, at the moment, I could go downstairs, dig out my PS3, download all of them onto an external drive, and I've got them, right? But what's going to happen when the stores go? Because these are under license. Are they just going to disappear? Like, at the moment, I've got access to PT, which I got from PlayStation 4. I can't play PT and download it anymore because it's been removed from the store. So we don't know if any of these questions, we don't know the answers to these.
My question is, are they going to re-release it and then expect further sales? Are these going to be future titles that they'll include in some sort of online subscription bundle? Or is there somewhere out there on the internet some notorious site, I don't know about these sites very, very much, where you could possibly have a hacked version of a PS3 and possibly download these titles?
Well, this is the thing. You're just opening the door to people to have to go down the emulation route. Because just like with me playing Resident Evil 3 earlier, I had to emulate that because I can't buy it. I can't buy that game and I can't play my PS1 copy of Resident Evil 3, which I have, on my PlayStation 5. So I've got no option other than going down to the basement and digging out the PS3, which I'm not doing, to play that game.
As you know, I collect video games, Davey. You've seen my collection arcing back to the NES and the Mega Drive. And to have a section of that just disappear, that'd be awful. That'd be heart-crushing for me. You know, I can't imagine how you feel having your online collection of PS3 games, well, just disappear.
Exactly. And this is the big thing that I wanted to say to you guys, really, and kind of just to rant about on this podcast more than anything, is that the amount of potential revenue that Sony is leaving on the floor here is absolutely insane. Even if they didn't incorporate trophy support or anything else, or any 4K upscaling or anything like that, and they just said, right, all our back catalogue of games, and I'm sure Capcom and everyone else would just be like, yes, you know, we'll take that extra revenue, chuck them all on the system for people to buy. You know, $3.99, $4.99 for a PlayStation 1 game, you could make an absolute killing, even if it is only a small portion of the market that buys that.
But
what's the cost?
But would you buy it again? If you've already bought it with your PlayStation subscription on PS3, are you then going to buy that game for £3 or £4, as you're saying? You know, for me, and probably going back to my, you know, background in PC, I'd expect these games for free, but that's not the Sony way of doing things.
No, and I think if there is, like on the Xbox, what happens is you put the disc in, if you've got the physical disc, and then it unlocks that license for you to be able to download that digitally, right? And that's how it works. Now, I'm not even saying they go through a system as good as that. I'm saying they just literally just put them up for people to be able to access all the games from previous generations, or just from PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 even, right? Just even those would be something. And I would quite happily fork out for those to save me having the inconvenience of digging those games out from somewhere in my basement, if they are £4 odd.
It's never really happened before, because we're on the cusp of that kind of digital content being old enough where the technology has moved forward. It's mad. It's never happened before. So we don't really know what to expect with this, do we? Really? You know, like, I've got a bunch of DVDs, right? That now I've got on Netflix, but I've still got those DVDs. If I sold all those DVDs and Netflix were like, I'm going to phase out all those movies, I've lost them. It's the same situation, right? It's because this is the first time this has happened that there's panic, because all your digital content is disappearing.
The thing I'm curious about, right, is obviously the PlayStation 3 stores go in now after 15 years active. So what happens in 15 years' time when we're on the PlayStation 7 or whatever they decide to call it? The difference now is that there are people on the PlayStation 5 with digital-only consoles. Their entire library will be digital-only. So if the same thing happens in the future when we're on the PlayStation 7 or whatever, they will literally be losing their entire library unless Sony come up with some solution for this.
Spence, you're a PC player. Imagine losing your Steam library.
Do not say Steam. I'll tell you, that's about 460 games I'd be losing.
Yeah, mine's a hell of a lot more, but imagine losing that.
Mental.
That's mental.
Yeah, that's a couple £100, if not a couple thousand. I'd be fuming.
This is it, exactly. Now, there's one kicker to this, right? One glimmer of hope that I wanted to bring into this. And I've got a feeling, I know someone on this podcast can be quite excited by this, and somebody else I don't know. There's a patent that's been released by Sony. And that patent is the ability to have older games through emulation on PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, and PS1 that have trophy unlocks. So what that means is you have the ability then to be able to play through something like Resident Evil 3, like I just have, and trophies to count towards your overall score. To me, that would be game-changing. That would mean I'd have to run back through Metal Gear Solid 1 and do everything. I'd owe it that. As my favorite game, I'd owe it that. I'd have to. And if that's true, and this patent does come out, then that means that they are toying with ways to be able to do this. And I think this would be super wise. Spence, I've got a feeling you'll be quite interested by this, being new to the trophy game. What are your thoughts on that patent that leaked?
Right. I hate to spoil something, but I actually saw that patent. and I saw a little article on that patent, and basically it's similar to a patent that leaked a good few years ago. That was basically the exact same concept, but it just never came into fruition, never happened. But the fact that they've reconsidered it and it's a new patent found means maybe now is the time for it to happen. And if it does, I'll be playing some old games. I'll be getting some old trophies. Because chances are, right, those old games come out, they're going to be lazy with those trophy lists. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be so lazy. And I'll be like, oh, that's one platinum. Oh, what's the next game? Resident Evil 3? Oh, that's a platinum. Give me that for beating the game. What's that? Mickey's Wild Adventure on the PlayStation 1? Oh, beat the game. Give me that platinum. That game's actually solid, by the way. That's actually a hard platinum. I'd be quite happy, not going to lie. But just, to be fair, just the ability to be able to play a PS1, 2, or 3 game. If I could play San Andreas on my PS5, granted, I'd probably do it for maybe 20 minutes and that'd be it. But I'd be happy for those 20 minutes. So if this patent came into fruition and I actually got to play those older generations, I'd be fucking happy, especially with trophies.
I don't know where the limit is with going back and playing older games. Do I really want to play a PS1 game on my PS5? I don't know.
I suppose it's just having that option to do it, isn't it?
I love options, as you know. But all the PS1 games that I've loved in the past, I own. And I own physical. And I would never buy them again regardless of trophies. It's nice to have them up on the shelf. They're not physically on this shelf, but I have them in storage and they will be on this shelf soon. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to play a PS1 game. I think PS3 and PS4 games, yes, that's fine. But going all the way back to PS1 games, I don't know if I'm convinced.
Let's take it one step back from that then. What about if we're just literally talking about the PlayStation 3 library, which at the moment we can't access outside of streaming it?
So you're talking about games that haven't been re-released, because a lot of
Yes.
the PlayStation 3 titles will be games that will be re-released on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. That seemed to be the time where they were like, do you know what, we've run out of ideas, we're going to go back, we're going to pick out good games, and we're going to re-release them on the newer consoles, okay? But there are some stunning titles that I have on PS3 which will never get re-released, but it's more like I love them, it's not the majority love them.
Well, I mean, think about it. Just Resistance for a start. We can't play the Resistance trilogy, and on PlayStation now, the only Resistance game on there is Resistance 3.
And of course, a lot of the online services have shut down as well for PS3. So you can't, like, for me, I can't play Transformers War of Cybertron online. I absolutely love that game. I'm a big Transformers fan, as the followers of my Twitter and the podcast know. Yeah, I could never play that game. I have trophied it, because it is a game that I have got a platinum for, so I'm pretty happy with that. But I could never go back and play any more of that online. And that's sad.
PS3 for me has just got so many great games, with the two infamous games in the DLC, and with Resistance and Killzone 2 and 3. And I can't play those games at the moment outside of streaming them, which for a first-person shooter in particular is not the best experience for those kind of classic games. I just think, like I said a couple times in this podcast, it's just a proper own goal for Sony, because they're just leaving money on the table for someone like myself that would quite easily go in there and spend a good 50 quid on spending £10 for these PlayStation 3 games.
It's just Sony not thinking about backwards compatibility, I think, properly. Like Xbox, obviously, it's fully backwards compatible, right? With a lot of their titles. As we mentioned earlier, you've got the 4 generations available on the newest Xbox. Now with PlayStation, they just didn't have the forethought to put those systems in place, did they?
You're exactly right. Unfortunately, as we've said a couple of times on the podcast, their software engineering in terms of like UI and that kind of thing just isn't really there.
Sony's meant to be hardware, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I laugh as I say that. And Microsoft, obviously, their software, which is mad when you actually put it in that light.
No, you're totally bang on. I mean, there's a reason why they were able to solve this problem last generation. And they introduced it into a system that didn't have it built in from the ground up. And they just introduced it through a software patch. And unfortunately, a lot of it with the PlayStation 3 is down to the cell processor. And that does make it a little bit tougher. But figure it out. I mean, Christ, you're a multi-billion company. Figure it out. It's not my problem. It's your problem to solve. And I'm not giving them a free pass for it. And I think with them limiting the ability to now download these games, they'll be lost to time unless they focus their shit, earn some coin by making this an option for people, it's a win-win for everyone.
On a complete side note, I am opening a rental store for all games of PS1, PS2, PS3 and upwards. But it's very expensive to join the membership, and I will screw you over.
I like that you're putting that out there originally, though. So at least if they jump into that offer, they know full hard, okay, he's charging me £200 a month for this. But he did say he was going to screw me over. So I'm not going to hate him for it.
It's an upfront cost, mate.
He's an honest man.
Cost.
He's an honest man.
But these games are all original, so, come around, sign yourself up for a membership.
If you smash up one of his boxes, I'll be there with a baseball bat to smash up one of yours. It's just the way it goes.
On the 18th of March, we heard the news that Sony has officially bought Evo. For those who aren't in the know, the Evolution Championship Series is the world's largest fighting game event. It's going to be featuring Street Fighter V, Tekken 7, Mortal Kombat 11, and Guilty Gear Strive. But no Smash Brothers in the list, boys, unfortunately, just yet, which I'm not sure if they're going to be including some sort of side tournaments to that, but they are the official lineup for EVO 2021. Mark Julio, who's a prominent name when it comes to EVO, he tweeted out that there's going to be other platforms available. It's not going to be solely on PlayStation. They're going to be adding Tekken 7 on PC. But how do you feel about this, guys? Because, we're all fighting game enthusiasts. We've all been in the scene for a number of years playing lots of different games. How do you feel about EVO being bought by PlayStation? How do you think that's going to influence the future of the tournament?
Well, obviously we know Sony have kind of had deals with fighting games in the past. They obviously they kind of are the system for Street Fighter. They run the tournaments basically every week for Mortal Kombat. Sony are quite deep into the fighting game scene, which I think is quite good. Them buying Evo just kind of makes sense. I'm a bit surprised they've done it now, after the allegations from last year, which I'm not entirely sure what they were. I remember one of the leads in Evo had some noncy stuff going on. But that's all I'll say about that. But he's obviously left Evo, he's been kicked out, and now they're just resuming as usual. I'm a bit surprised by the lineup you mentioned, because usually I think it's 9 games, and where's Marvel 2?
I think those are the titles that have been announced so far. There's probably more to come, so potentially Smash Brothers would be in that list. But so far, Street Fighter V, Tekken 7, Mortal Kombat 11, and Guilty Gear Strive.
Yeah, I hope Smash isn't on that list, not going to lie. But I think it's a smart move. Obviously, Sony's deep in fighting games. They're trying to get deeper into it. It's a good community to try and captivate, try and get a hold of. Smart decision.
But what do you think they're going to do with it, Spence? Ultimately, they're not going to say Evo is a PlayStation-only space. What do you think they're going to do for it? Are they going to use it as a platform to promote future fighting games? A lot like in previous years, Riot. Obviously, they've got strong ties with Tom Cannon, who is one of the main promoters and main kind of influencers behind Evo. Obviously, he's related to Riot, and their new fighting game was heavily promoted at the last tournament. Do you think PlayStation are going to go down that vein? And if there are PlayStation All-Stars, that's going to come out at Evo, potentially?
Definitely not. I think it's mostly probably just so they can show off their brand, get more publicity, likely try to move most or some of the games to PlayStation specifically, just to make sure PlayStation is being used. Maybe even, because tournaments now are still using PS4s, so they probably want to switch that to PS5 as soon as they can, as soon as consoles are available. But I can't see anything massively big picture happening other than Sony streaming one of the Evo streams, because they have multiple streams every year. They do it on multiple channels for different games. Maybe Sony hosting a stream themselves,
sure,
which would give them some revenue.
Yeah, it's all added value, I suppose, and Sony would take that. But I know from my sort of fighting game days, Xbox was definitely the preferred sort of platform, and I remember buying an Xbox specifically to play fighting games. So if PlayStation are putting themselves as the market leader when it comes to fighting games, and they are putting themselves in that like market's eye when it comes to Evo and the bigger tournaments, potentially they're going to pick up a couple of extra sales there. But Davey, do you have any kind of say on this?
Well, I think it's clear to say that it was a Davey was right moment. Last episode, I said about Sony having a big interest in all the different fighting game scene, and how I thought that was pivotal to the success of the console, being able to corner that market and having the partnership they did with Capcom with Street Fighter V, and now what they've got with Soul Calibur, Mortal Kombat 11, and Unist. And I was right. And it turns out they've doubled down on that by buying Evo, the biggest space for fighting games.
We're 13 episodes in. I think something at some point, one of us has got to be right. So congratulations on getting one thing right after 13 episodes of predictions. Congratulations.
I'm following in Spencer's footsteps where he got a prediction right for the first ever time. So it just turns out, Phil, it's just you who's constantly wrong.
I've said PSP 2. That's coming out, bro. You know it is.
I wish. But in terms of what I think, and in terms of what's going to happen, there's a reason why Smash isn't included in this event this year. It's because it's online. Smash Online is fucking awful. It doesn't deserve to be anywhere. Especially on a big stage like that, it does not deserve to be there. It hardly runs when me and Spence play and we're 15 miles apart at a maximum.
And you don't think this has anything to do with it being a Nintendo title as opposed to a title that has always traditionally run on PlayStation, such as Street Fighter, Tekken, and Mortal Kombat?
No, it's literally just down to the netcode. The netcode is so bad, you cannot put that on the main stage. That's embarrassing for Nintendo. More than anyone else. You cannot.
Nintendo have featured really heavily in previous Evos, though. They've done a lot of launches, haven't they?
They have.
When it comes to the fighting games and releases when it comes to characters.
They have, but then you think about it. Melee Online is only possible through Dolphin and through the work that they've done in terms of the community, which isn't sanctioned by Nintendo. So they can't have that because it's not a legal mod. It runs better than Smash Ultimate. Smash Ultimate Online is so bad. You cannot feature it. That is literally the reason. It's just so bad. It really is. Honestly, it's terrible.
Yeah, but what are the competitive Smash versions? You play the newest one and you play Melee, don't you, for all the old school?
True. And you can't play either of those because of the fact that the way to play Melee Online isn't sanctioned as legal, especially by Nintendo. It's not endorsed by them. And Smash Ultimate is just so bad that it's just embarrassing to the actual brand. You just can't. In terms of what I think the future of Evo is going to look like with PlayStation support, all I believe is that they're going to have extra money pumped into them. And in return for that, what it's going to mean is you're going to have bigger prize pots, which means you're going to have bigger turnout. You're going to open it so that the same way that Sony are doing it now with Mortal Kombat and with Soul Calibur and Unist and all these different games, is that it means they're going to have official leagues through the games that are done by PlayStation. So like the Mortal Kombat League I'm watching every week, twice weekly, you get constant PlayStation branding on those streams. And it's just a good way to be able to captivate that entire audience. So they think, right, well, the best way to play this game is through PlayStation. Because that's how we'd have to play if we were playing local. And gone are the days of having different versions with different kind of delays in terms of their frame makeup and stuff like that, which it was for Street Fighter 4. So there was a difference between the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 version. They had different delay buffers. And that kind of stuff's gone now. In the modern systems, they are a total console parity. But in terms of going into a venue and knowing that all your peripherals are going to work on one system, in terms of your fight sticks and things like that, where they're often different branded between Xbox and PlayStation, it will skew you to go and buy one version of that.
I remember back in the day going to Wasteland Weeklies and taking 2 fight sticks, an Xbox one and a PlayStation one, for different games.
Yeah, exactly. And so knowing that everyone's going to be playing on that system, and it will for the majority of cross-platform games, unless there's a superior version out there, which Evo then will respect. And the founders of Evo will come out and said, look, we're not changing the way we run it. It's open to everyone. Now, the only interesting thing about this that I think is quite interesting is that Nintendo will come out and said, we will assess if we'll be involved in the future. Yeah.
Have they?
Yeah,
Have
we'll
they
assess
actually
it
said
like
that?
we do with all fighting game tournaments. So we'll see what happens with Nintendo. I mean,
my
if
God.
Smash Ball!
if Smash don't go, then that's a big blow to Evo. But at the same time, Nintendo hates Sony. They hate them. So if there's two consoles that aren't going to work together, you're more likely to see Xbox and PlayStation work together than you will PlayStation and Nintendo. They hate each other. You'd hope that Nintendo would do the smart thing and just think, look, even if it is PlayStation branded, right? There's PlayStation branding everywhere. It's a good way to get our game out there to the masses, right? The biggest tournament on the planet. It's a win-win.
You would definitely hope that. You would hope that Nintendo are just like, we're going to do it for the fans. Because Smash Brothers is a massive game.
Yes,
people love that game. People are passionate about that game. And for them to say it's not going to be at EVO because of ultimately money, it's really hard, isn't it?
It's weird, especially because obviously this is about Smash being at EVO. Smash literally has Joker. It was the first DLC character in Smash, and that was from a PS4 exclusive game. That was from a Sony game. So surely they've compromised in the past. I don't see why they would hesitate
Metal
to
Gear
compromise
Solid,
again.
Snakes in it. You know, there's countless characters, isn't there, that are
Cloud. But
PlayStation exclusive.
I suppose the
Cloud.
difference is these aren't PlayStation-owned IP. That's the difference. It would be like having Kratos in there.
Yeah.
Kratos ain't ever going to be in there. They'd never let him in. It'd be
so
amazing,
sick.
but it's not
That'd be
going to
sick.
happen.
Was he good in PlayStation All-Stars?
Yeah, he was busted. He was great.
Second, wasn't he? He wasn't as good as Raiden.
No, Raiden was the best.
No, the best character was Cole.
Oh yeah,
from
I
the
saw
Smash.
this. That blew
Was
my
it?
mind. Yeah, it blew my mind. That did.
Yeah, the Buzz played him. The Buzz played him and cheesed every tournament. He had an
Christ.
infinite.
Okay. Maybe
The Buzz
we
won
definitely
every
weren't playing
tournament.
that game properly.
We weren't playing that game. I was going for level 3s. I wanted to get the flashy ultras, you know?
Yeah, I've seen tournaments. I've seen tournament grand final gameplay.
I've heard that before, Davey, about you. You always go for flashy ultras.
I love a flashy ultra. To me, overall, I think this is a really good move for PlayStation, and I think it ties into what I said last episode in terms of it just cements them to be able to have one segment of the competitive market, which is theirs. And sure, there's going to be games that are better on other SKUs, and Evo are going to allow that, but it means that you're definitely going to be having the same way that they go in now with these weekly tournaments with MK11 and all this stuff. You're going to have all that for all different games. And if they can then get Capcom to get Street Fighter 6 a PlayStation exclusive again, they've just cemented it. Like, that's it. Done deal. It's that's where you play fighting games.
That's probably, as we're saying about Mark Julio's tweet about Tekken 7 going to be running on PC. I suppose that's the preferred version of Tekken 7, isn't it, to be played on PC. But as I mentioned earlier, Evo's got a lot of ties to Riot. And of course, we've got their new fighting game possibly coming out soon in development. Is that going to be a PlayStation title or is that going to be a PC title? Who knows?
Well, if they're smart, they'll have it on all, won't they? Like, for a fighting game,
Yeah.
you want to have the maximum audience you can and make sure crossplay is enabled. That's what all fighting games are learning now, is that crossplay enabled is just is a necessity. Especially with something like Mortal Kombat, it's given it an extra breath of fresh air into it, where you've got the ability to play with the Xbox ecosystem, which is obviously a lot smaller than PlayStation by numbers. So do you want that player community, like you said with PlayStation All-Stars, do you want them to not be able to find a match for 10 minutes or to be able to get into a match immediately because they got access to the bigger player base?
You mean Destruction All-Stars?
Oh, sorry,
but mate, I've been peddling this kind of strain for years. I would love to be able to play everyone on every console in every game I play. I don't like this segregation when it comes to consoles, but I totally understand it when it comes to exclusives. Like if I'm on PC, I would love to just own the console generation.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And so I can see that Riot, it's been quite surprising to me. I mean, it probably wouldn't work very well, to be fair, like League or anything on a console, but in terms...
League's never going to be on a console.
No.
No, never. It
But-
can't.
There's certain games and certain styles of games that will never translate to console.
No, I totally agree with you.
And
But in terms of a fighting game, this is their chance to be able to create that relationship, isn't it? And forge it, especially with the single player stuff that they're going for now, with like branching out all the League content.
well, they also have a story game coming as well, and that's definitely coming to console as well. That's already been announced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the fighting game, you'd assume now, because of that partnership with PlayStation and the tie to Riot, you're going to see the fighting game on PlayStation.
And I suppose the important thing to note in this, that it is a partnership that Sony have gone into. They don't own it outright. So they've gone in with RTS, who's a company who are responsible for event management. And so it could be that Sony are literally there just to get some of the promotional material to provide the consoles that are going to be used on the day. It could just be as simple as that. And that's all they get involved with. But it's a good way for 3 days to have solid marketing by hundreds of thousands of people who watch Evo. And at the end of the day, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great move to be able to go in and sponsor these events and to take ownership of them and get them associated with your brand. I think it's a brilliant move, personally.
Well, I think when we looked at it, didn't we? We thought that, FPS games, that's generally PC. RTS games, that's generally PC. And then we were thinking, where does Sony sort of fit in with this? Maybe it could be the fighting game genre as being their, priority console as such. Nintendo and Xbox don't really have that when it comes to competitive nature anymore. I think PlayStation are taking the one that was up for grabs, and that was the fighting game scene for me.
Yeah, that is spot on. The entire, if you look at the top 10 competitive games in Twitch, they will mostly all be PC games. Because it's FPSs, MOBAs, strategy games, and then it's the literal only category that could possibly be on console is fighting games. You were spot on.
Apart from FIFA, I suppose. Like sports games.
Right, yeah.
I think sports games would be the only other one in my mind. Like Rocket League is still PC, as much as a lot of people still play it on console. Fortnite, all those games are PC, primarily. But when it comes to sports games, I think a lot of people play console. Or it was when I've been to tournaments anyway.
They have a player base on PC, but I believe most of those
Stronger
player
on
base
console.
do play it on controller anyway.
Yeah.
So it's regardless, really.
So overall, then, we're all pretty happy about this deal. None of us have said anything to kind of sour it or to say anything that they're going to take away content. None of us believe anything like that. We think it's all going to be quite an open experience where they're just going to let things go as they normally do, but just benefit from the fact they're going to get the extra promotion.
Yeah, more or less.
Well, it shores it up, with that tweet that they're going to be still available on other consoles, But I would love to go to Evo. I think it's one of my it's on my list of things to do. Once COVID is over,
bucket list,
I would love to go to Vegas with you boys and go to Evo and watch a big tournament like this. It would be epic.
Mortal Kombat.
You'll
It would be epic.
see me in Grands, and I'll make sure to shoot you a little cheeky.
Mate,
cheeky
I'll be
nod.
at the bar throwing some craps.
I'll walk up to Sonic Fox, smack his little hood off, right? His little mask.
What tail are you going to have?
I'm not going to have a tail. You know how I feel
Why
about
not?
furries, right?
Why not?
I don't know.
You're in Vegas, mate. What happens in Vegas dies in Vegas.
That's true. But as a 32-year-old man, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror sometimes and think, why am I wearing these ears and this butt tail, right? And so...
Is a butt tail.
Leave
It is
this
a
in.
butt
Leave
tail.
this in.
I'm not going to cross that line, okay? I think once you cross that line, you don't come back. And so I'm just going to walk up, I'm going to smack his hood off, and he'd be like, oh, that's disrespectful. You come out of nowhere. I'd be like, I've been here the entire time. I'm putting you down. And then I'm going to go 0 for 5, right? I'm going to get absolutely decimated, and I'll walk off that stage, and I'll fist bump everyone there, and then just do a Stone Cold Steve Austin, just neck 2 cans. And everyone will be like, this guy knows what's up. And then I'll turn back to Sonic Fox, and I'll be like, you're all right. And that's it. And that's the end of my hero arc. And then I'll wait for my documentary to roll in.
As long as, Davey, when you sit down to play him, you settle down, you look over to him, you don't say anything, and you just loosen your watch. You slip it off, and you put it in front of the console. Lay it down, because it's a big watch. You don't want that to weigh you down when you're playing. And then you just flat out lose to him.
No, you do that after you lose round 1. So it's the mind game then.
Take
Oh,
it
that's
off.
the power up. That's the
That's the
power up, is
power
it?
up.
Taking off your watch.
Taking off your weight.
And I'll make sure I'll sit down next to him at Grands and I'll say, I don't even play this shit game.
So, boys, my topic of the evening is the new PSVR 2 handset. We've finally got a look at what it looks like. And basically, it is very, very similar to the Valve Index and the Oculus Quest and the Rift handsets, because they both use the same handsets. It's the Touch 2s, I think they're called, where it's basically a big ring at the top. The difference is that instead of a ring at the top, it's a ring that kind of encases your hand. It goes over and you slide your hand into the ring.
Oh!
Hey-o!
Right, so first I'm going to read off an entire statement from the PlayStation blog on what they've said about the design. So they've said, the first thing you'll notice with our next-gen VR controller is the unique design, which takes on an orb shape that allows you to hold the controller naturally while playing with a high degree of freedom. There are no constraints with how you're moving your hands, providing developers with the ability to create unique gameplay experiences. We also designed the new controller with great ergonomics in mind, so it's well balanced and comfortable to hold in each of your hands. We applied learnings from testing users with a range of hand sizes, as well as the decades of insights from controllers across all PlayStation platforms. The result is an iconic design that will change how VR games are played. What are your boys' opinions on this statement and on the design if you've seen it?
So, for me, looking at it, there's been loads of patterns over the years of a split controller. So having like one side with having certain buttons and the other side the other. Just like with the nunchuck, right? The nunchuck back on the Wii.
Sure.
And
Sure.
to finally see that come to fruition here with the VR is really welcome. When you compare it to the Move handset, it looks so modern. The Move handset was shit, right? I had a Move handset. I bought them for PlayStation 3 for the sports game and stuff like that. And it wasn't great. And Phil nicked them from me.
I was going to say, you don't have them anymore because I have them.
They were vibrators.
I don't know what he did with them. They're his
That
now.
is what
They're
they
his
were.
now. They're not mine.
Make sure to wash them when you get them back.
All I'll say is that the design on these, in terms of the aesthetics of it, look brilliant. I think they look really modern, they look really high end, and they just look great.
So for me, it's a much of a muchness, you know. I've seen these designs before. It's similar to the Oculus Quest 2. It just feels the same, right? There's no innovation there, other than you're saying that the grip is slightly different. It just seems to be the standard for VR controllers. They've not come out with anything new. If anything, I prefer the old Move controllers because they were so different and so unique to Sony. They were very much a Wii remote with an orb on the end, but they were different, you know? These just look as if they're just following the trend of every other VR handset to me.
I suppose the thing is, like when you look at controllers, right, you can go loads of different ways with it in terms of the design. And there's the way that works. So like, say, for example, the Wii U Pro controller, the PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 controller, the Xbox controller, or you can go the Wii U gamepad route, right? And you can try and change it and make it absolutely a Fisher-Price load of bollocks. And so there's loads of ways that you can go. And if it's a tried and true technique for being able to map movement and to be able to create an effective way that works in VR, why not do it?
I don't feel like it is a tried and true, you know, method of creating these handsets. How long has VR been out, like officially, right? Not that long. And how successful has VR been? Not that successful. So
True.
This is the time where you can bring innovation to the table and you can say, hey, we're going to do something different. We're going to try something. Here's what we've done.
Well, that's quite funny you say that, Phil. Because now we're moving on to the features. The new VR controller enables players to feel and interact with games in a much more visceral way. There are several features, including key features from the DualSense controller, which match our vision for what next-generation VR games can be. Adaptive triggers. Each VR controller left and right includes an adaptive trigger button that adds palpable tension when pressed, similar to what's found in a DualSense controller. If you've played a PS5 game, you'll be familiar with the tension in the L2 and R2 buttons when you press them, such as when you're drawing a bow to fire an arrow. When you take that kind of mechanic and apply it to VR, the experience is amplified to the next level. Secondly, the haptic feedback. The new controller will have haptic feedback optimized for its form factor, making every sensation in the game world more impactful, textured, and nuanced. When you're traversing through rocky desert or trading blows in melee combat, you'll feel the difference, magnifying the extraordinary visual and audio experience that's so central to VR. Thirdly, finger touch detection. The controller can detect your fingers without any pressing in the areas where you place your thumb, index, or middle fingers. This enables you to make more natural gestures with your hands during gameplay. Fourthly, tracking. The VR controller is tracked by the new VR headset through a tracking ring across the bottom of the controller. Fifthly, action buttons / analog sticks. The left controller contains one analog stick, the triangle and square buttons, a grip button L1, trigger button L2, and the create button. The right controller contains one analog stick, the cross and circle buttons, a grip button R1, trigger button R2, and the options button. The grip button can be used to pick up in-game objects as one example. So boys, the last two features didn't seem all that impressive to me, but that's because I'm coming off the Oculus Quest, which has those anyway. But firstly, Phil, because you started last time, how do you feel about these features?
Sounds like a hell of a lot of tech. So my immediate question when they come to all these different features that they're just put in the handset, and we're not even talking about the headset itself, what is the price of this? Oh my God. So if we think about the PS5 handset, that's around £60. And we're not talking about mine and Spencer's, Amazon opportunity of 40 quid or 30 quid or whatever it was. This is £60 for a PlayStation 5 handset. How much is this setup going to be? My God.
Yeah, I don't know. It does feel like it's going to be a bit much.
It's going to be premium, mate.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm not sure. I've never broken my Oculus controllers, so I'm not sure how much those cost on their own. But I'm sure those have the finger touch detection as well, so I'm sure those aren't very cheap pieces of kit either.
Are we saying Valve Index sort of level? Because I don't think console people are going to pay £1,000 for a VR headset.
No shot. Not a shot in hell. They physically cannot charge 1,000 for PSVR 2.
What do you think? Put it out there. Are we talking 500 quid? 300 quid?
400. I want to say 400 at most. Because the thing is the headset doesn't really have to do anything other than track the controllers. Because the games will be played on the console.
You're forgetting the fact it's like a 4K potentially screen in front of your face.
No, sure, but the headset's not rendering the games.
The difference, right? And I wanted to jump in with this very quickly. The difference, there's one feature on there that I think could be quite overlooked, and that's the one about the controller tracking. And the big difference is there's not going to be a camera like there was on the PSVR 1, the unit on PlayStation 4 at the moment. There's not going to be a camera. So that's a big deal. There's so many wires at the moment with the PlayStation VR 1, and that's the biggest complaint that most people have. So if they can eliminate that and make it so it's a better experience without having that kind of tracking, that's a massive deal for me. Huge deal. But the cost of the Oculus controllers, like you were saying, they're 130 quid.
What, for one or two?
Two. So
okay, that's not as bad. It's a bit deep.
It's pretty pricey. You got to think that's just to play the game. You can't play it with one controller, so you got to have two. So it's the same as buying a DualShock, isn't it? They charge 130 quid for a DualShock, they'd be outraged. So you're probably looking at a similar amount. So not a cheap piece of kit just for the controllers alone.
Yeah, but however, my Oculus Quest was £400 when I bought it. That's cheap. The Oculus Quest 2, which is the same controllers and just a better headset, is £300 on launch. The VR tech is getting cheaper. It's actually, mate, it's so peak. Don't even say wow, it's so peak. I bought my Quest like 3 months before the Quest 2 launched. It's so peak.
Oh, that's grim. I can't believe it's
I know.
that cheap.
I could have saved 100 quid for a better gear. 300 quid. But that says a lot because basically the PSVR 2, same kind of handsets other than haptics and adaptive triggers. But the headset itself, granted, is 4K and it is just basically a monitor in a headset. It doesn't have to play the games, so it will be cheaper to make that headset than it would be to make the Oculus Quest. So, considering that's 300 quid, you could be looking at roughly the same price point, but this is Sony. It's Sony. I reckon 350, 400 quid.
Before I jump in with mine, I know he's dying to say something here. So I'm going to bring him in and then I'll say my bit about price.
So what I was trying to point out when we were talking about price, a lot of the time Sony will release hardware at a loss because they know the games will sell.
Sure.
VR games, do they sell?
Not enough.
No. So they will need to charge for the hardware because they've already released a VR headset, and they understand that the games don't sell the hardware. The hardware sells the games because of I want VR, it's the newest thing. I feel like it's the other way round. I don't know a single PlayStation VR game which I'd want. I would only buy it to say, hey, I've got VR. I've got the PlayStation VR.
I'll disagree with you on that. The reason being is if you had the games there, we'd buy the hardware. Just like with the Xbox argument. It's exactly the same thing. And the problem is, it's like we said when we covered the first initial showing of the PlayStation VR. If the games were there, actual proper games that were Game of the Year contenders, like with Half-Life Alyx or there isn't any others, right? If you had games like that, then people would rush out and buy this hardware. But there isn't. You get mini games. Like Phil says about PlayStation Plus games, which aren't mini games, you actually do get mini games, and that's what you're buying your PSVR for.
And how many PSVR games do you get per month? You get the single PSVR game, so that is.
If you're lucky, you get one. You don't get them every month, right?
I've only been a subscriber for 1 month, so I got the one PSVR game.
True.
You did just get 4 from Play at Home.
Oh, I got that as well. So I got 5 PSVR.
Very
games.
true. But this is
Mini
the thing. This is why I disagree with you. Is because if the games were at a certain quality, that it necessitated getting that hardware, people would get them. But there isn't that level of quality game there for people to buy it. So I think the people that have bought it already are early adopters to the technology and they want to get involved with the technology. But in terms of it being a successful product long term, it needs to have the quality of game there for general mass market to take notice and think I'm missing out on this experience, which isn't there yet.
100%. You know, if Naughty Dog turned around and they were like, the next Last of Us or Uncharted, it's going to have a PSVR element, or you could play it. The same as you can play Resident Evil. It's going to have that element to it. They're going to push some sales towards it, isn't there? But currently, they don't really have that investment in the studios just yet. But they need to if they're going to be pushing hardware at a higher price point. My question is, how many studios that PlayStation own are specifically aiming for VR?
Sony London.
They can't be doing
which
great.
Were Sony London, and they've kind of shot off into more kind of offshoots since. They were working on exclusive games. So they released, I think it's called, I keep on wanting to say Blood and Sand, but I think that's the 50 Cent game.
Yeah, that is the 50 Cent game, yeah.
Banger. Absolute banger.
You on about the Arena game?
No, I'm on about that one that's like you're a London gangster. It's like The Getaway, but VR. Came out like 2 years ago.
It's so good you can't remember the
Yeah, I'm
name.
not
Well, I didn't buy it. I'm not interested in it. I don't have VR. But I'll tell you now what it's called. Listen, I had to Google it. It's not called Blood and Sand. That is the 50 Cent game. It's called Blood and Truth. And that game is developed first party. And at the moment, Sony have literally just said to the studios, and this is probably why you got the quality you do in terms of exclusive game, is they said to them, make whatever you want to make. We're not going to force you into making a certain specific genre of game or for a specific system. And that's why we get these great first-party exclusives, right? Because they're not being mandated to do it. However, I think it would probably be a good idea to mandate a couple of these studios and say,
Dreams.
Dreams. Yeah, Media Molecule, like, fucking bin off Dreams. Get on doing this. Like, someone like that who's got that kind of innovation in hardware and a way to kind of think outside the box, I think they could do wonders in VR.
Even though I think Spencer mentioned earlier in our DMs that Dreams actually got a BAFTA.
Dreams did get a BAFTA literally today or yesterday.
I mean, we've had 2 shockers in 2 episodes in a row, right? We've had that it was ranked in the top 10 games on PlayStation 4 in that magazine that Phil read off, and now we've had that they've won a BAFTA. I mean, granted, it probably should win a BAFTA. It is a technical marvel. However, it's just not a fucking game. And I'll die on that hill. It's just not a fucking game. If I want to make a game, I'll become a game developer. I don't want to buy a game to fucking make a game for somebody else. Like, I just do not see the appeal in this.
Dreams seems to be one of those games that like pleases everyone outside of the gamers.
Yeah, you're totally bang on. in my opinion.
So when it comes to like awards and things, like it's going to win BAFTAs, right? Because it's groundbreaking, it's new, it's innovative. It's a game, as I said, that doesn't please gamers in any sense. I don't know a single person who owns the game.
As much as I actually haven't played Dreams, I've actually seen quite a lot of videos on Dreams itself and on like a lot of developers in Dreams, fucking just non-paid developers, aren't they? Just making their own creations. I think Dreams, if people learn how to use it properly, could be the perfect game for gamers. Because it's a game that never ends. It's a game of endless games. So as long as these virgins are making games on Dreams, we'll always have something to play. And if they're good games, they're good games. Chances are they're dog shit. But every now and then you'll get a good game.
Spence, did you ever play Little Big Planet back in the day?
I did, yeah.
Did you ever play Jump the Knife?
I think so.
It's a banger. It's an absolute banger.
Moving away from such classics as Jump the Knife, the majority of the times when you're on Little Big Planet and you search for levels, the majority of them are shit.
Yeah.
Right? And if I've got limited time like I do now, as a 30-year-old man, you know, I'm working, I've got family to support, I got all this. I got limited time on games. Do I want to really spend an hour looking for one fucking experience which can last 5 minutes? No. I'd rather play an hour of a game that's been designed from the ground up to be superb. And that's how I feel about Dreams. And to be fair, the majority of people agree with me because no one fucking bought it.
And a lot of the time when it came to Little Big Planet, the games that were good and they were like highly rated were parodies of other games. So the Killzone version of Little Big Planet, that was amazing. That was highly rated. The Resistance version, it's all taken from other games.
You're totally right.
It's not original ideas.
I actually completely agree because, as I said, I've been watching a lot of videos on Dreams. The free games that I've seen that people have made that are actually brilliant are Death Stranding, someone's recreated Death Stranding, Mario 64, someone's recreated Mario 64, and Kingdom Hearts, someone's made. Granted, it's not just a remake. They've made like their own unofficial sequel to Kingdom Hearts, as if it doesn't have enough already.
Boom.
Exactly, and that's the thing. That's why I think out of what you were saying, Phil, in terms of bringing us back on track, in terms of Sony throwing their resources at it, you want to throw a studio like Media Molecule at it, in my opinion, because you don't want to waste someone like Naughty Dog or, you know, Sucker Punch. You don't want to waste them, or Guerrilla. You don't want to waste any of your big hitters on VR because you've got a limited scope for that. You want to put a studio which still have a big name to them, but you've got nothing really to lose. People don't give a shit about Media Molecule these days.
I think a lot of the developers you sort of mentioned are primarily known for third-person games.
Yep.
When it came to Resident Evil, and that's probably why it was a success on the PSVR, it was a first-person game.
Yep.
So if we can take a PlayStation studio which is known for first-person games, I think they would be successful on PSVR.
So you're saying someone like Guerrilla, putting Guerrilla and putting Killzone on there?
That's what I would pick. If it was my choice, I would say Guerrilla, you want to get the game on PS5 and you want to get it on PSVR 2.
It's like an optional. It's like an optional.
Optional.
Like RE7 was.
Yeah, that's what I would do personally.
Very smart.
Spence?
I was going to say, Phil mentioned Resident Evil.
Oh, fuck you.
It made sense.
It made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense. Come on.
Listener.
It made sense, but I just wanted to
Spencer's brought something to my attention here about the Resident Evil button being pushed. But I think in this example, I'm going to let it slide.
I was going to say, the thing is, it makes sense, but Phil's the one that was bigging up the Resident Evil button at the start of the podcast.
I did big it up.
And then he's the one who did it.
It made complete sense, didn't it?
Did
to
make
be
sense.
included.
What's the rule? What are we going in? Because
I think it's a vote. I think it's a vote. I'll take the shot if you vote it, but I think it was a valid argument. It's not just Resident Evil for Resident Evil's sake.
I'm voting against the shot. I think it was a relevant reference.
It was a relevant reference, but it was still a Resident Evil reference.
There we go. We all agree. Relevant reference. Cheers, Spence.
I would have had a counter to your argument if it wasn't Resident Evil. Because if you went like Firewall Zero Hour or something. They're first-person games, but they're not anywhere else. So I wouldn't want Gorilla to be siphoned that way. But the fact you said it's like to both versions, but it's
It
just
should be,
enhanced
yeah.
with VR,
Yeah.
perfect. I'm well up for that. So I got no counter to that.
So Phil, in terms of price, what are you saying? Like, how much do you think it's going to cost?
It's a really difficult one to put your finger on, really, because I mean the PS5 obviously jumped up in cost compared to the PS4.
Yeah. Not the PS3.
Not the PS3, obviously, but it is a premium item, and from what you've been saying when it comes to the features, the PSVR 2 is going to be a premium system. But I don't think they're going to have the games. They need to have an enticing price point. You said 300 to 400, and I hate to sit on the fence and agree with you, so I might go slightly higher with 450. Is that close enough to not be the same as you?
It's close, but 450 is the price of the console itself, physical edition. That's where I think that's crazy. Plus, the reason I go low is because of the Oculus Quest 2 being 300, where it does more or less the same things minus adaptive triggers. It still has haptic feedback, I'm pretty sure, and the touch sensitive stuff and the tracking all in the headset, but it has so much more in the headset itself rather than the 4K. So I think the headset will be a lot cheaper to produce, whereas the controllers might bump it up. So I think it'll equal the same as the Quest 2.
But Sony's selling point has always been it's an easy VR headset to use. You can just plug it in, it's plug and play. You don't have to install drivers. You don't have to have a high-end computer to run it. It's just plug and play. It's a simple thing, right?
I mean, yeah, except for the 20 wires. But yeah.
That's how it's sold anyway.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So yeah, we're going to go 450. I think we're going to go same as PS5 in my opinion. That would be my vote. If we're going to put a drink on it, so I'm going 450 for my drink. If you're going 300 to 400, Davey, that's going to be a hard choice for you because I think it's all covered.
I know we don't normally do this on the podcast, but I totally agree with Phil. I think it's going to be around that price.
You can't.
All right,
Every
I'll go
time.
425. I'll go 425. All right, because I think it is going to be Phil's price because I think that's not unrealistic. At this point, we don't have the specs of the actual PSVR unit itself. So we don't know. We just don't know. So we're kind of shooting in the dark. But I think you're right in what you're saying, Spence, in terms of they've got to match up to their competition. However, what Phil's saying also makes a lot of sense in terms of you don't have to fuck around. I hate PC gaming because I hate having to constantly update shit. It isn't done for you. You've got to search around. Like for me, who doesn't know his PCs as well as you guys do, every time I get something and it doesn't guide me to it and it just doesn't work, I don't have a fucking clue why. And I gotta go through forums. I gotta go through all these different bollocks to figure out why my sound's coming out of 2 different places instead of 1 or whatever it is. Whenever I plug in anything, I just don't get it. And so a console streamlines that entire thing. And for me, if they can leverage the power of the PlayStation 5, put it through a headset, 450s or 425, which I'm going for now, as I can't go the same, is reasonable. I don't think that's too much. And we're talking dollars here. We're not talking pounds, are we? We're talking dollars. $425, I'm saying.
I was saying pounds.
I was saying pounds too.
Yeah, because the console was 450 quid.
Okay.
Here.
I'm going slightly less then. I'm going $425. So that works out about £375. So, but they'll charge £400 for that, I imagine.
So the same as Spencer then.
Well, anything lower, I win. If it's £400 up to 450, he wins. If it's 450 or higher, you win. If it's lower than 400, I win.
All right.
I really like that, but the way Davey's done it is in a roundabout way. He's sitting on the fence.
Yeah,
I am
bullshit,
sitting on the
bullshit.
fence. I am. I'm not going to go lower, am I? I'm not going to be like, 200 quid. You know.
So, in pesos, I think that's 600.
Oh, Jesus.
I just want to ask quick. Do we know how much the PSVR 1 unit cost?
On launch?
On launch, yeah.
I'll tell you now. $399.
Oh, 399.
400.
400 launch, 2016. Same price as the PS4.
So, now 350. It's 350.
In pounds.
In pounds, what I said, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
$399.
that's a bit of a rip-off.
So going up 100
Wasn't at
quid.
the time.
So
No, at
going
the
up
time,
100
yeah. To be fair, my headset was 400. Yeah, I mean, maybe not.
And yeah, and you're
So
talking this was in 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah, going up 100 quid, I think that's fine.
So, boys, obviously, we're supposed to be discussing the features of the PSVR 2 handset. So let's get back to that. What do you boys think of the adaptive triggers being included in this handset?
Personally, in the games I've played, I haven't really experienced them to the max.
Sure.
You know, in Miles Morales, obviously there's a little bit of feedback when you're swinging around. But the only thing I've got to sort of mention on this was when I was playing Destruction All Stars. Obviously, I could feel the rumble as I was like driving the cars, and that's the first time I've actually really noticed the haptic feedback when it comes to the PS5 handsets.
I just hope they've done a better job with it than developers have done with PlayStation 5. Because at the moment, we're still in the launch period. So you've got most games that are developed cross platforms, PlayStation 4 and 5. So you're not going to have that same level of attention put into these games. But after playing COD and after playing Astros and feeling the potential for what these controllers can do with the triggers and feeling just how immersive it feels, I'm really excited to feel what that would feel like in VR for first-party exclusives. And I really hope that developers take it and run with it going forward into the generation. Because at the moment, it's been really lazy outside of Call of Duty and Astros.
They got to be careful though, because something that Spencer, I think, experienced was that in Spider-Man Miles Morales, because it is a PlayStation 4 title and a PlayStation 5 title, there was some bugginess, wasn't there, with the handset? There were some issues there. So if people are going to be developing for PSVR, the first one, and now the PSVR 2, that's got to be right, hasn't it? Straight away.
You'd hope they say, cut PSVR off. Like, that's its own thing. Just like they do with PS3 and PS4, right? So moving into that generation.
No, I don't agree with that. Because that leads us to the problem you were talking about earlier, about cutting people off on previous consoles. I think it's always got to be cross-generation when it comes to new games. That's my personal opinion. If I bought a PSVR, and now the PSVR 2 comes out, and I can't play those games on it in a lesser resolution or in some certain vein, I'd be so annoyed.
I totally disagree with you in every single way. Because what's the point in owning the new hardware? Like,
for a better experience.
You're thinking the Xbox Series X existing just to play the Xbox One games.
I've been saying for ages about how I'm gutted that Horizon is cross-platform with PlayStation 4, right? That it was developed in that way. So it can't possibly be the level it could be if it was just PlayStation 5. Because you can't have the same level design. You can't have that same level of features that are included. So if you've got index tracking, all these different ways to track the control, which is the way to play a VR game, but it's got to accommodate for the Move controller, it means it's a hampered experience. I'm not on board with that at all. I want it to be a clear cut. You got some games that can run on both, sure. But you got certain games that if they're designed for the new system and the new ways that you can play that new game, why would you then say I'm going to take that out so that I can't have index tracking, I can't have all these different things because the PSVR 1 can do it? You're just hampering your own experience.
So 2 points there. When it comes to Horizon, it's Guerrilla. So they are used to providing you the best experience on the hardware you have. They'll always give you an amazing game, regardless of when they're releasing games throughout the generation. They understand the technology. My second point is, when it comes to VR, you want to encourage adoption. If I've got a product which ultimately I want to encourage people to buy, I'm not going to limit them in any way. I'm not going to say this is the PSVR 2 and you guys on the PSVR, you fuck off. I'm not going to do that because I want to encourage adoption. I want people to buy the PSVR, regardless if it's PSVR 2, PSVR 1. I just think you're going to get a better experience on PSVR 2 because there's the upsell. But I wouldn't want to limit my customer base that's already adopted a product which hasn't been successful.
My counter to that would be you're limiting their experience by design because they can't use the features that are available in that handset because they got to accommodate for a previous system.
It's already a limited system though, mate.
Can I Can I
Yep.
fix this whole solution?
Bring it on, Spence.
This whole argument, I just fix it, please. I think the point got across wrong initially because me and Phil both imagined you meant PSVR 1 games wouldn't be on PSVR 2. And I'm sure that's not what you meant. You meant PSVR 2 games wouldn't be on PSVR 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how we understood it. And now, secondly, I think they would do a very similar thing, whereas when we've been playing It Takes Two, it's a PS4 game, but it's PS5 enhanced. I think they would do PSVR 1 games, which are PSVR 2 enhanced, which are basically the same game, higher res, adaptive triggers, haptics.
I fucking hate that, though.
To be fair, It Takes Two doesn't have any adaptive triggers usage. The haptics are noticeable, but like not amazing. Nowhere near Astros, but neither are any PS5 games at the minute, other than COD and Astros. And Bugsnax. Bugsnax has great adaptive triggers, by the way.
Yeah, it does.
So aside from that, I think it's fine. It'll take a long time for companies to get used to fine-tuning haptic feedbacks and using adaptive triggers as properly as they should. So it's fine to have PSVR 1 and PSVR 2 enhanced. Same as they're doing with the Oculus Quest. They're doing the exact same thing.
I think you've got to think of it differently these days. I don't think you think, oh, I'm a PS5 developer. I think you think these days, especially because of the adoption of the PS5 has gone, I think you think there's two consoles out there which I can sell to both. And they're similar, but I can get a better experience on the higher end hardware.
The problem is, right, and this is with PS5 and PS4 in particular, you got different ways that you can design a game on PS5 to PS4 with the inclusion of an SSD. And so I don't want to have the same fucking ducking through rubble that you have in Final Fantasy VII. I don't need that in my games. I want it to be smarter. I want it to be better than that. And if I've got to then design around the fact that there's a PS4 holding it back, that's just bullshit. That's like saying, oh, we might as well just incorporate it into, we're releasing it on Switch as well. So we're going to develop it for the Switch and then upscale it. So on PS5, you got 4K 60. On Switch, you got 1080 30. Same game though. And you know immediately, oh, I've got fucking fucked experience. I got an experience which is last gen. Like, why would I want that from a game that I'm going to pay £70 for on PS5? You'd want something that they turn out with God of War and they say, by the way, God of War's coming out in 2021, like 2022, like everyone said it is. And by the way, it's PS4, PS5. I'm going to be fuming. Because there's enough time to leave that console in the fucking dust. Because you've got to adapt to the fact that everyone's got the same base hardware. So you can make your game the best it can be.
Totally get your point. And like, I do feel it. I want the best experience on my PlayStation 5 because I am an early adopter. But for the people that still are on PS3, still have a PS4, I want the backwards compatibility. I want games to be available on all systems I have.
I'll say what I want them to do, personally, is follow Capcom with Resident Evil 8. Make games for the PSVR 2 and then downscale it for PSVR 1. So we get the full experience and they get the same game, just slightly lesser, maybe longer load times. And that's
100% agree. 100% agree.
I think we're all going to be in agreement on that.
That's the solution. It's the solution.
And that's it for this episode of In PS We Trust. We've said already, but the best way to support the podcast and make sure we can get a new audience is by sharing it around with your friends and by putting reviews on podcast services. And the main ones that make a big impact to us as a podcast is Apple Podcasts and Podchaser. So if you can please put a review on, it takes a couple of minutes, but it would mean a massive increase to our ability to get out there to a wider audience.
Or, of course, if you want to support us financially, DM me on Twitter and I can provide bank details, PayPal or Bitcoin.
But thank you ever so much for listening. This has been episode 13 of In PS We Trust. I've been Davey.
I've been Phil tonight.
And I've been Spencer, as always.
Take care, guys.
Peace.
In PS We Trust is hosted by Davey, Phil, and Spencer. You can write into the show via our email, pswetrust@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @InPSWeTrust. To find each of us online, follow our Twitters, @SSJDavey, @PhilipHoy, @SpenPie_. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. See ya.